Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Meet the Angular Team. Today with us, we have Doug Parker. Doug, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We're glad to have you here. Glad to give the community an opportunity to meet Doug a little bit better, find out a little bit more about Doug. So let's get right into it. Why don't we start off with just asking how you got into programming?
Programming. It actually came when I was in I was just getting into high school. I had played a lot of video games growing up, and that was a big thing that I was really into, kind of a nerd in that way. And I had heard about a program going on at my high school, about a global information technology academy. Is a fancy word, but it's basically like a 4-year programming kind of group, where we sort of had a class each year in high schoal doing different forms of programming. And they ended up coming down to the junior high and showing off some of the cool projects that they had. And at the end of the year, they would spend basically the last quarter of the year working on a video game of just kind of whatever random thing that person wanted to work on. And so I thought that was so cool. I was like, oh, look at all these awesome projects that people have. I never really thought that was a thing that I could do. And so I kind of got into playing around with it, ended up joining that group and going through this sort of 4-year academy, doing a whole bunch of different programming stuff, and just sort of went off from there. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it, building video games, building all these cool experiences. And I just found that it just clicked with me in a way that a lot of other subjects never did. And so I just sort of immediately fell in love with it and have been programming in some form ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Let's maybe dig in just a little bit into Angular. What do you love about Angular? What's your favorite part of Angular?
About Angular, I think my favorite part is probably the way that we can sort of the way that I think Angular is the most sort of complete product out of many of the other many of the competing web frameworks in the ecosystem, where I feel that we sort of have this framework and rendering engine that like helps you write things in a way that makes sense to you. You write Angular templates that work and that present a nice flow for binding data and things like that. You write components, and then Angular sort of manages how that ends up on the display. But then also we deal with, we've got the Angular CLI that deals with how to bundle things and how to package stuff, deal with your development workflow. And then also we have the components team that gives you a whole bunch of really high quality material components, very accessibility first, and work great. And sort of extend a lot of these aspects into different areas that a lot of other technologies don't really fill. You get into things around like schematics for generating code, or the language service that lets you integrate with things really well in your editor, things like that. And just sort of as these pieces fill out, I think it sort of presents a much more holistic experience in a way that I think is often lacking from a lot of other frameworks. And so I really appreciate that with Angular, and then I feel like I'm buying into a whole ecosystem and a whole product of great tools and systems that do what I need them to do without having to patch together a whole bunch of different pieces to try to make the thing that I want to make.
Cool. All right. So is there, staying on the Angular theme here, what would you say is perhaps the hardest feature of Angular to learn, or piece of Angular to learn?
Hardest feature to learn. I know when I got started, I really struggled with ng modules. I didn't really understand what those meant and like what that encapsulated in an application. And it's sort of like, okay, I get that I have different components that do different things and I can compose them in this way, but then what is the purpose of modules? Should I just like do one module for each component? Do I like, if they're supposed to be features or something, how do I divide those? What is the purpose of that? I know I personally always really struggled with that. And even today, I don't know that I really understand all the nuances of it. I am excited that in coming up soon, we're hoping to launch standalone components to try and address that problem.
Right.
A lot of work going on in the ecosystem. So I'm hopeful that in the near future, I won't need to understand what ng modules do, and things will just work in a way that makes sense to me. So I'm really glad that we're in a position where we're able to fix a lot of that and make it a little bit easier to learn Angular.
Cool. All right. So let's talk about the Angular team itself. What's your role on the Angular team? What's a typical day like for you?
So I'm the tech lead for the Angular tooling subteam. So we're responsible for most notably the CLI, but then this also includes things like schematics. We work a lot in areas like the compiler or language service, some testing aspects, all these various tools that you don't really think a whole lot about, but you would notice a lot if they weren't there,
Mm-hmm.
as they fill in a lot of the gaps in the ecosystem. And so that's sort of the main thing that I run, and most of my day, a lot of it is sort of discussions with a lot of other Angular team members about trying to figure out how we can ship new features, what all the different pieces are that we need to make things align. One thing I was dealing with today was about, if we're going to be launching standalone components, we should probably update schematics so that when you do ng-generate, you generate new code, that it can encourage you to use schematics, and we just generate things to be right to begin with.
Hmm.
So we want to talk a lot within the team to figure out where these things should connect and jive together to create those useful synergies that create that holistic product that I was so excited about.
Right.
And so there's a lot of discussions around that, a lot of figuring out the sort of the best way to push this Angular experience. And I also do a lot of stuff internally and maintaining a lot of internal rules within Google. Google has kind of a lot of its own little fork of certain pieces of this infrastructure and do things a little bit differently that we often have to play with. So I'm kind of juggling a lot of those different areas, trying to figure out where the team can work together, setting some priorities for what projects we need to work on, and where we want to take the framework in the future. So kind of a whole bunch of everything, kind of. I don't know, that's a very specific answer, but stuff that I tend to deal with on most days, at least.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So let's talk about ng-conf. Is there anything that you're really looking forward to at the upcoming in-person ng-conf?
I'm definitely excited to finally be at an in-person ng-conf. I joined the team sort of right before the pandemic started, and so I've attended some virtual ng-confs, but I've not had the opportunity to be there in person. So I'm really excited to just sort of come together all in one group, being able to talk with other Angular contributors and team members that I don't normally get to see, and also just being able to interact with the community, see what people are enjoying about Angular, what they're not enjoying about it, what areas they really want us to be developing in, as well as just seeing what kind of cool stuff the community is coming together with. So it's really just kind of more that interpersonal aspect of just being able to see and interact with a lot of these folks. That's the thing that I really haven't had the opportunity to experience, and I think that's the part that I'm looking forward to the most.
Cool. All right, well, let's take a slight turn to the more serious and thoughtful here. Imposter syndrome. How do you deal with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I struggle with imposter syndrome on an almost daily basis, especially kind of being the tech lead for tooling. I feel like that's just made my imposter syndrome a lot worse. Of being like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I in charge of this? I think one thing I've noticed is that I think just talking about it and being upfront about imposter syndrome really tends to help me the most, in that I feel like everybody experiences it in their own way, and you don't often see that until people start talking about it. I've had experiences before where I was talking to Jessica, also on the Angular team, where I just kind of offhandedly mentioned, something about like, oh, then I'm stressing out about this thing with my imposter syndrome. And then she looks at me and is like, oh, you're feeling that too? I thought you were the one that had everything under control, and then I had the imposter syndrome. And I'm like, I felt the complete opposite. I thought you were the one that had everything under control and knew what you were talking about. And so I feel like just being upfront and being able to just sort of talk and share that experience, that like, yes, this is something we're all feeling, we're all experiencing. I think it really helps put things into perspective that,
right.
It's okay to feel that way, and that doesn't necessarily reflect your actual abilities in something. And so that's kind of been my sort of coping mechanism for imposter syndrome.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, let's finish up here. We're going to move into our speed round. And so I'm going to give you a list of A or B questions. You got to choose A or B. No explanation necessary. If you want to, you could choose neither or both. But hopefully we'll learn a little bit about you by what choices you make here. You ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Question one, pretty standard. Kirk or Picard?
I grew up with Next Generation, so I'm gonna have to go with Picard. I think he's the world's best boss, frankly.
All right. Okay. Episode 8 or episode 9?
Of what?
Star Wars.
Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Episode. I personally was not a fan of episode 9. Episode 8 was at least interesting in ways that were not also very. It didn't really work for me, but it at least tried to be interesting and different. And then 9 was just kind of a big car crash in slow motion that I was not interested in at all. So I'm gonna have to go with 8.
Okay. All right. Here's a fun one. Game of Thrones or Squid Game?
Ooh, I have not seen Squid Game, unfortunately, so I'm gonna have to default to Game of Thrones there.
Right. Ruby or Scala?
I haven't had the chance to do too much Ruby. I did enjoy Scala when I was messing with that, and I like functional languages, so I'll go with Scala there.
Scala. Okay. All right. Mickey or Goofy?
Ooh. Goofy always, I don't know. Goofy's drawn weirdly. He's kind of like this weird dog that just, I don't know. It just always bothered me in a weird way that I can't explain. So I have to go Mickey.
Mickey. Okay. All right. Manga or mangoes?
I admit I watch a lot of anime, but I have never really bitten off reading into manga. So I'll go with mangoes.
Mangoes. Okay. Stranger Things or Lost?
Probably been enjoying more of Stranger Things. I think that's held up a little bit better going forward. It hasn't quite had the finale to ruin things for us just yet.
All right. We'll finish up with a kind of a fun one here. Billie Eilish or Billy Joel?
Probably Billie Eilish. I think I don't have a great explanation for why, but I don't know. I just like her music better.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Doug, for taking your time to come on here and chat with us. And hopefully people enjoyed getting to know you better. Looking forward to seeing you and all the attendees in person at ng-conf this year.
Yeah, I really looking forward to it. Really exciting to see everybody in person and hopefully meeting you in person as well.
Yeah, cool. All right. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much.